Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Well, they tied him out.
You know where you're at, the USA Cup. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act, but we gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And today I have a very special guest on the DMV Sports Zone YouTube page. And it is Matthew Paris, Washington football team beat reporter for the Washington Times and fellow Chicagoland college student, or I should say alumnus at this point. And Matthew, thank you so much for joining me on this very special interview. I want to first ask you a couple questions with regards to your career. And the first question I want to ask you specifically is, can you talk a little bit about your career journey up until this point and how excited you are to be covering this football team in 2021?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. First off, I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, I'm from Illinois originally. I grew up in Naperville, but I went to DePaul, and so I got involved in journalism kind of through there. Like actually in high school, how I got into journalism was I was a boxing fan, like a rapid boxing fan when I was a teenager.
Okay.
I started writing for this website, through this internet forum. This guy was like, "Hey, any interest in writing?" So I was like, "Sure." And I didn't realize that you could get credentialed and go fights. And so, I was getting this experience as a teenager. And so I was like, oh, this is really cool. I like the writing too. It wasn't just to go to free fights. And so I was like, maybe I should look to pursue this. So I did that. And then in college, I got really involved in the student newspaper, was really involved there, held a bunch of roles. And then, internships and freelancing were really important. I had internships with the Northwest Herald, which is in Illinois. And then how I got kind of out here to cover the team was I interned for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I was Michael Phillips' intern, if you know what is on the tweets. So that kind of led me to this area and kind of getting connections there and just kind of networking. And the Washington Times had an opening, and I was like, hello. That's who I am. It was kind of right after college, and now I've been here for a minute, and it is a whirlwind. It's fun because it never ever stops.
I appreciate you for sharing that, and have appreciated your content over the years. Super excited once again to have you on. Next question I want to ask, what's your advice though for those who may be wanting to pursue that journalism, sports media route? Maybe even for this crazy team down the line? What is your advice there? Yeah,
I mean, just trying to get as involved as you can early on. Just willing to do a bunch of things. Do for you, since you have a great YouTube channel and so that's good to have that. But also get involved. See if your local newspaper needs people to cover a high school football game. Be good at writing, video, and audio. Just have a bunch of kind of skill sets and get involved early on. But it's when you're coming out of college, it's important to have those clips to be able to show someone if you want to be a writer or to have a video reel, whatever. So it's just the more you can do, the better. And this journalism age, everyone is required to do everything. So it's a hectic industry, but it can be rewarding.
Now with the Washington football team, the team that just keeps making news, and I know definitely keeps you busy. What's going on with Curtis Samuel? I know you just got off the press conference with Ron Rivera, and basically he said that Curtis Samuel will be on the IR now, so we'll miss, I believe, the next 3 games at least for the Washington football team. How big of a loss do you think it is for the team that they will not have Curtis Samuel for these first 3 weeks? And do you think we'll actually see him down the line this season? Because a lot of fans out there are worried that this might be a Paul Richardson type of situation.
Yeah, it is a big loss in the sense that they were counting on him to be that deep threat, to be that versatile option for them. And so anytime, you're not getting out play on the field, it's going to hurt. But at the same time, they had been preparing for this game without Curtis Samuel. They had gone most of training camp without Curtis Samuel. So the blessing in disguise out of this is that Ryan Fitzpatrick has had snaps with Cam Sims, De'Ami Brown, those guys who will be the number 2 receiver in Samuel's place. So it is a loss, but it's not as big of a loss to say, you play the first 4 games with Samuel and then bam, he gets hurt and has to go there. So, for the rest of the season, they're saying that it's a short-term thing. Mm-hmm. He got very, very angry when someone brought up the idea of whether surgery is going to be needed. So don't put that out there and stuff like that. So it is, I'll believe them for now. Like, I think he'll come back at some point, but we need to see how his body responds, because he tried to come back before and then looked to re-aggravate his injury on Wednesday. So, right now it's kind of I'll believe it when I see it mode, but they're still very high on.
And the other piece of news that broke with regards to the Washington football team, this was like the headline a couple of days ago before this Curtis Samuel news. What do you make of the recent episode of ESPN's Adam Schefter's podcast, where he brought on co-CEO of the Washington football team, Tanya Snyder? And basically there's this discussion going around about how Ms. Snyder ultimately did not say that those 8 names were among the finalists for the Washington football team. What are your thoughts on that whole fiasco from earlier this week? And do you think they actually have a name in mind right now?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like, there's some theories that they've had the name and this is all like a smoke and mirror show to kind of distract from the point. And maybe they do, but again, they have to do their due diligence and try and clear things. So I'm sure they're going about, like, if there are 3 names left, like there are, they're probably doing full-scale mock-ups for each one, and then they'll go with the one that they have chosen already or whatever. But we don't know that for sure. So, like, with the 8 names, it's just a matter of, like, semantics. And what is annoying to me about it is, if she misspoke, which, let's be honest, I think she did.
Yeah.
Like,
she didn't seem ready for the question, too.
Yeah, she like, it's just a matter of, like, one, Schefter looked like he was kind of in the wrong because he misassumed that those final 8 names were the names, but they weren't. They just got them from a Washington promoted video, like the brand series. They got it from the video board. You have those. You're starting with, like, a wrong premise, basically, and then she confirms the wrong premise. So either, like, she heard the name that they have and, like, confirmed, like, oh, is that out there? But, like, the fact whether there's 8 or not 8, it's just, like, a mess. But it's a mess in the sense, like, you don't have to necessarily worry about this. It's just like, say she messed up if she did, like, it'll be fine. This resistance to not admitting their errors, I think, is kind of all. That's been the Dan Snyder way, and seeing with Tanya Snyder, how is she going to act? How is she going to represent the organization? There's still a little bit of that I saw in that interview. That's how it came across to me.
I mean, this has just been something that I have been asking myself, to be honest, over the last couple of months since Tanya Snyder was recently appointed co-CEO. But do you think that, at least at the highest levels of leadership for the franchise, that it's actually changing for the better right now? Because Dan Snyder is technically not out in front of so many things now. Technically, Tanya Snyder is the person there. Do you think Snyder himself has changed in these last couple of years and will become a better owner of this team, especially with, like, the whole name change situation, and then, obviously the sexual harassment allegations from last year? Like, what do you make of all this?
Well, look, I mean, his track record it's long, and fans rightfully or so aren't happy with him, and so he'll need to actually prove in good faith that he is changing, whatever. But the thing that's hard to judge with that is the guy doesn't talk ever. He doesn't get out there, and, like, with the Tanya Snyder interview, that was nice. At least it was like they kind of talked about it at the beginning of the interview, but was this the beginning of a PR push that they want to put out her and to trot her out and kind of restore the franchise's image? And, like, that's all public relations stuff and marketing, and, like, that can have a negative tone, but it is effective in the sense that, you look at what they're doing with Jason Wright and Ron Rivera. like
Chicago brethren. Yeah.
yeah, those guys are out there getting the message across, and whether like you can be um cynical about like that and like say, oh, that they don't do that, but talking to Ron Rivera and Jason Wright, like both come off as sincere, and maybe they're just really good at their jobs. But I do think that there is some genuine effort to turn things around. I mean, they have done things in place over the past year that have seemingly improved like the workplace setting, but also you look at the football stuff and that's in a better situation too. So ultimately this is going to come back to winning games, and I know that sounds lame, but people will be happy with the franchise if they consistently win, and that's what they're trying to build.
Now with the on the field stuff with regards to the Washington football team, obviously you have the quarterback position, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic, Fitztragic. Do you believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick will right the ship effectively this year for the Washington football team and play more like the good Fitzy that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years? Or do you think he'll revert back to what he was for most of his career leading up to the last couple of years, which is mostly bad Fitzy?
Right. I think it'll be smooth. I'll say this. I think he'll raise their ceiling on offense, or the floor rather. Like, they finished last in DVOA last year. I've been on the beat since 2017, and so I haven't seen competent quarterback play really since Kirk Cousins, and I think he can give them competent quarterback play. Like, I think Alex Smith, to be fair, was solid last year in points, but it still wasn't. He's not going to lead you like you need the offense to do, and so I think the defense is still going to be really great. But like if they aren't as sharp, or you're just facing better quarterbacks, so it's like they take a step back, the offense is going to have to pick up that slack presumably, and I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, warts and all, like he can get you there still. He can make up for some of the shortcomings, if there are shortcomings defensively. So
moving away from the offense, the defense, right? The unit that's likely going to carry this team on their backs this year. How big of an impact do you think a healthy Landon Collins will make on Washington's defense this year?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that. He was my biggest surprise of training camp. I think he was a lot of people's. He looks really sharp. He hasn't really been that impact player since arriving to Washington, not even factoring in the Achilles injury. But I think what's interesting with him is maybe they have a better sense of how to use him in the box. But, in the preseason, if you watch like the snaps, he's back there as the free safety, like because of how the defenses adjust. So it seems like they're a little comfortable with playing him there. But yeah, he's lost weight, looks pretty fast. The instincts are good. Like the thing with Landon Collins that was concerning last year was he just had been missing quite a few tackles, especially really early on in the season. And so if he can clean those up and be sharp and decisive, then yeah, I think they're going to love to see him out there.
Yeah, feels like they're going to switch Cameron Curl and Landon Collins, free safety, strong safety occasionally over the course of the season. Do you think that's going to happen?
Yeah, so I think it'll be a mix of like the guy we haven't talked about is Bobby McCain, who they signed from the Dolphins. He's going to be in there too. It's going to be kind of like a rotation, and Landon Collins will still be their strong safety most of the time, or it'll be Cam Curl, but like it won't. The only times that like Landon Collins will play as like the free is just like if the, let's say that the opposing offense motions and like they have to readjust in the box, like pre-snap stuff. So, they defenses do that. Like if you remember with DJ Swearinger and Monty Nicholson, like they did that a lot too, kind of based on the look. So that stuff happens. That's like kind of common in NFL defenses, but I think they trust Landon to do it. And I think they're pretty high on Bobby McCain too. So
I asked this on my recent Washington Football Weekly live stream, and I want to ask you this question as well, because I think it's actually tighter than maybe a lot of fans out there think. What do you think is more likely to happen this season? Chase Young wins the 2021 NFL Defensive Player of the Year, or Jamin Davis wins 2021 Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year?
I would say Chase Young, just because even though that's probably a harder thing to accomplish. One, I've been really impressed with how Chase Young has looked in the camp. There's been so much going on that I don't know if you take him for granted at this point, but he's looked awesome. And we all saw the pass rush move on Isaiah Wynn, and his hands look better. But also, I think why it was so instinctively went to Chase Young is because I don't know if people are going to be. I think they're going to have to reset their expectations for Jamin Davis at least at the beginning of the season.
Okay.
You know, they drafted him with this idea of making him a 3-down linebacker, and they still feel comfortable that he can get there. But if you've noticed in like the preseason games, you see a lot of Cole Holcomb and John Bostic and nickel. They play nickel 65% of the time, and so he'll be like Jamin Davis will be a starter, but in base packages, and we'll kind of see him at least initially, maybe not be on the field as much because you see that kind of hesitation, all the stuff that Ron Rivera talked about last year with the linebackers and how unhappy he was, like that they weren't playing full speed. You're kind of seeing that in Davis's game, even though he is like a fast football player, he's just not like exploding through the gap. And so like there's just an adjustment period that he has to get. And so, you know, maybe by week 7 or 8, you know, Jamin Davis is your 3-down linebacker up to speed, but at that point it's way too hard to win defensive rookie of the year if he hasn't really made a mark in the first half of the season.
No, I totally get that. I think Rio Robinson, another great content creator in the Washington Football Team podcast community, also said the same thing pretty much. I guess just for me, I mean, you have the likes of Aaron Donald, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, who's an underrated defensive player of the year candidate this year. I just think Chase Young might be a year away from potentially being like that guy. I don't know if you feel the same way or you think he could jump right back into that spot, you know, this season in his second year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point. We can say that every year as long as Aaron Donald is in the league. But if you look at like the gambling odds, Chase Young is 11-1. Like it's pretty good value, and like that's not. They're like really accomplished defensive players that are behind him in that list. So you know you're gonna have to want to see like the sack totals improve, but sacks aren't everything, and he was not the single reason, but he was like one of the main reasons that Washington's defense went from like, oh, this is a pretty solid group to like, wow, this group can be something special. And I know that's not groundbreaking analysis, but he lived up to the billing, and I'm a big believer in Chase Young, as a lot of people are.
And I don't know if you heard, but the Washington Football Team, they're playing a game on Sunday, against the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a pretty big matchup, week 1, 2021 NFL season. Do you think, we of course saw the Cowboys fall last night to the Tampa Bay Bucks, although it was a scary game to watch. It was super close. But do you think that Washington will ultimately start their season off on the right foot with a win against the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday?
Yeah, you know, I kind of do. And it has nothing necessarily to do with Austin Eckler being out. Like, I don't really believe in running. Like, the line has weirdly shifted from Washington. It was like an underdog in most sports books, and they kind of still are, but like it shifted a little bit. And I don't know if that's because of Austin Eckler being out, but like, you know, I kind of like it. Like the Chargers remade their offensive line. Maybe they're not as cohesive in the first week of the year. They haven't gelled yet. Pete Haley, my colleague, I guess, not colleague, we don't work together, but you know, he's on the beat. He made this great point that Justin Herbert like hasn't really played in front of fans in the NFL before, and so like, you know, his third down percentage was so good last year. Maybe the crowd noise and, you know, who knows, saying that at FedEx Field will make a difference. But it is interesting to see, and I kind of I don't know. I like Washington's defense. I think the offense can keep up. Like the Chargers defense, I'm interested to see what it looks like with Brandon Staley. Obviously, Joey Bosa is incredible, but you know, they're kind of like the AFC version of Washington, except maybe instead of their defense being great, it's their offense. Like they kind of are on similar parallels. So, but this feels like a game Washington can win, and you know, I think that they probably will. But don't hold me to that.
Do you have a score prediction?
Oh, shoot. Let's go 24-21.
Okay.
Maybe.
I have it about the same, like 24-23. So
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of teams that might be the inverse of what Washington is, obviously we talked about the Cowboys, right? They lost last night. Great offense, defense, but you got the Eagles as well in the division. You got the Giants as well. How do you see the NFC East division shaking out this year?
Yeah, you know, I think it'll come down to the Cowboys and Washington, those 5 NFC East games at the end of the season, I think it's going to be there. I mean, if you watch that game last night, as long as Dak Prescott stays healthy, that offense is going to be like a legitimate force. And that unit can win you the division, just kind of like Washington's defense when Washington did the division last year. Like, they are that good, and probably will have 3 1,000-yard receivers by the end of the season. Like, it's a crazy talented group, but at the same time, like, if you're Washington fan and watching that, you notice that Dak Prescott is getting hit and getting pressured, and like, even Amari Cooper was like getting up slow some plays. So I think there's still like a little bit of margin there that while this is a great unit, their defense, as you said, like, is not nearly as good. So I don't see Dallas running away with the division. I see it being pretty tight. And yeah, the Cowboys are kind of who Washington would have to worry about. And we'll see about the Giants and the Eagles, but I don't know.
So do you think Washington and the Cowboys could make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, it's not the most like insane possibility, but you also look at like the NFC South has like I don't know what the Saints are gonna be, but the Bucs, and then they get a team there. Like 3 wild card spots are there, but you have the Vikings and the NFC North if the Packers win, and like there are a lot of like they're an interesting like wild card team. If that's kind of what it comes down to. It feels like there are like 7 teams for that last third spot.
And I love to ask this question to end off all the interviews I have with special guests on the channel. And I'll ask you this question as well. What are your thoughts on the future of this Washington football franchise? Do you think Coach Rivera is building a winner to the point where in the next 2 to 3 years, we could be talking about a Lombardi trophy back here in Washington, D.C.?
I'm not ready to go there just yet because the long-term quarterback situation, or not even long-term. Like if they added Aaron Rodgers, of course I'd be like, that's not a long-term option, but I'd be like, all right, Lombardi, like that's I wouldn't pick them to win the Super Bowl, but you're a viable contender at one point, and like there are 5 and 6 of those a season. They're not one of those teams yet, but they're building this the right way, and that's kind of, if you're a Washington fan, I think why you have to be encouraged, because for so often they would bring in players that were either injured or coming off career years. Like that sustainability hasn't been high, and so with Rivera, it's can he sustain this? Can he build upon this young core that they have and going forward? And I think there are legitimate ways you could say yes, he is, and he's done that before in Carolina. But at the same point, if you're like just to play the other side, like Rivera's teams in Carolina at a certain point they were stagnant, and then he missed the playoffs like those last few years, and they weren't able to grow. So I'm kind of need to see it, but I think they're a really nice franchise of blending modern like analytics and I think Scott Turner is pretty like a forward-facing offensive mind versus that old school approach, and so. I think that's kind of what fans want to see.
Well, Mr. Matthew Paris, again, I appreciate you for coming on for this very special interview. It was really fun getting to ask you about your career journey, thoughts on the Washington football team, the news that broke earlier this week with regards to, Curtis Samuel, the Tanya Snyder clip, everything really, the upcoming matchup, and of course the division. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the DMV Sports Zone channel, where we like to post fire content as much as possible. Also, go follow our Twitter page and our Instagram page, all lowercase DMV Sports Zone. And with that being said, Matthew, I should have started off by asking you this, but do you want to plug anything to the good people out there who may be watching before we sign off?
Yeah, you can just find my work on the Washington Times website, washingtontimes.com/sports, if you want to go a step further. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Matthew_Paris, Paras. So all right. Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Thank you so much, and see you guys on the next one. Peace.